Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. I'm going to jump here at the top just to talk for a few minutes before we get into a really awesome sit down with Tyler Metcalf, as you'll see in the title, as well as I'm telling you now. We talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves being legit contenders, and I fully believe that now. Tyler lays out a really great case. Before we get into that, really great episode with Tyler. Like I said, before we get into that, just want to remind you, SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers podcast. $20 off your first purchase. March Madness games are right around the corner. Those are a lot more affordable than people think. If you're anywhere near any of those sites, you get $20 off your first purchase with code TWOPOINTERS, TWOPOINTERS. You make sure you're getting a good deal. SeatGeek will show you a deal score on a scale of 1 to 10, red, yellow, green, get a view of your seat, the whole thing, right? SeatGeek is one of the best ticket marketing apps in the United States. You're able to get $20 off your first purchase, help support the show as well, so we continue to bring you the best content we can as well. Just wanted to remind you at the top about that. So, I do want to address the metaphorical elephant in the room. If you want to hear the more detailed conversation around this topic that is very captivating in the college basketball world right now, around court storming, you can go check out Everything College Basketball. I did a show, I kind of like a little guest spot, I guess you would call it, even though I'm a co-host over there. But I jumped on at the top of the Sunday show the other day. I'll link in the description as well, or I'll put it on YouTube in the little eye in the top left corner, exclamation point, whatever that little thing is at one of the corners. So I haven't figured out which side it is on. But anyway, do you want to hear my more in-depth breakdown with Josh and Peyton on Everything College Basketball? Go check that out. 30 minutes at the top of the last Sunday episode. So, look, at the end of the day, those of you might be, if you follow me on Twitter, you've already seen the tweet. I'll address it and kind of touch on it really fast at the top. And then I want to make sure we leave plenty of room. Tyler, I asked for 30 with him. We end up going 40. Awesome, dude. We got into some really fun stuff. So I'll read the tweet for y'all, those that don't follow me on Twitter. And I'll just kind of lay out my case with the three things that happened that I think are getting looked at poorly about this tweet, and then like I said, we'll get into the episode with Tyler. My tweet on Saturday after what happened to Kyle Filipowski after Wake upset Duke at the Joel Coliseum, students at Wake Forest rushed the court. There was like 1.8 seconds or something like that on the clock. I'm not encouraging anything whatsoever with that. I don't think that was correct on their part. I think that Wake Forest should have had a better plan in place. So to be upfront about that, I'll read the tweet. I completely agree what happened to Kyle Filipowski is bad. But someone please tell me how you were stopping 14,744, which, by the way, that was the amount of students at the Joel. I think that was the last sellout or something since 2017, but biggest crowd since 2017, something like that. I said more at other venues, in parentheses, and then hyped up students and fans from getting by 50-something security personnel. So let me read that middle sentence there. Someone please tell me how you were stopping 14,744 more at other venues, hyped up students and fans from getting by 50-something odd security personnel. And then the key tag slogan, the four words that caught folks up real bad was, "It's impossible to police." Look, a 240-character tweet doesn't always do its job. I'm being upfront and real with you about that. That's why I'm here telling you about this, right? Again, a better breakdown on Everything College Basketball, good conversation, good debate. Obviously, the solution, the whole point of my tweet was that no one gave me a valid solution. Sans, Phil, Dexter, shout out to Phil from Everything College Basketball, my good dude. He gave obviously the case where basically they have the power to implement a complete shutdown of them. Do I think that completely shuts down? Do I think with the 362 chances that we would have at somebody breaking the rule and then forfeiting a win, which I don't believe in, I don't think is right. Whatever it is, right? Other than the gavel coming down, I don't think there's a solution, right? And even Phil's solution isn't perfect, right? And so my point was, I wanted people to lay out the case. I'm not even going to give some of those people the time of day for two reasons. One, none of them were real good fixes. Let's be real about it. They just weren't. we laid out really a good case on everything college basketball. Josh brought up a few things. I mentioned the eliminating the handshake line, because when you rush the court, obviously players don't get to do the handshake line anyway. So why is it a thing? Sportsmanship, it's just something that we've kind of adapted to, and the coaches still do the normal sportsmanship, handshake or whatever, and there's still time for that. And then the second reason is people can't separate opinion from fact. Right? It's a fact that what happened to Kyle Filipowski is bad. I addressed it in the beginning of the tweet. So I had 3 things I wanted to lay out there because people got really defensive about their opinion, right? This is opinion. This is a conversation I'm willing to have. I think people, do I think it's right to attack like a Jay Billis or Seth Greenberg about some of their opinions and how harsh it can be? No, I don't think that's right either, right? Again, opinion from fact. What can I continue to sit here and tell you that is the right or wrong answer, right? That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to have an open dialogue and an open conversation about the topic. Really quick, the 3 things I want to make clear from the tweet that may have gotten misconstrued or whatever the word is, right? That, again, laid out a way better case in more detail on everything college basketball. I want to make that clear. I want people to go over there and do that, so I'm not spending 30 minutes talking in circle about the same thing. But 3 things I want to be clear about. I was in no way defending what happened to Kyle Filipowski. That's the first thing. Up front, without question, people need to understand that. If that's your first thing you're bringing up to me, you're going to get blocked. There should have been a better plan in place by Wake, the administration, the arena staff, whatever it was, whoever's in charge of that decision, it has to happen. The term impossible to police, I kind of already addressed this a little bit, got taken way out of context. What I mean by it is that I'm saying it is impossible to completely prevent with what measures are currently in place, right? What we currently have, it's impossible to prevent. I've seen scenarios where it gets roped off, people get held back. I know Creighton, when Creighton beat UConn a week ago now or so. Look, they did a really great job. That photo obviously conveniently surfaced right after all of the Filipowski stuff happened, 5 days later. But Creighton handled it. UConn got off the floor. Nobody was hurt. It is what it is, right? We're talking about 2 instances, now 2 of the biggest players in college basketball, Caitlin Clark and Kyle Filipowski. But 2 instances compared to hundreds, right? I brought up the little guy, like defending why is court storming good, and here's the third point I want to make. I am pro court storm, obviously. I think that tweet is very, very clear. If not, I'm making it clear that I'm pro court storm. If people want to ask why, they're one of the many things in college basketball, and I laid out a really great case for what is and why college basketball is unique. It's fun, unique, exciting, it's authentic, right? It's all of those buzzwords that college basketball is, what makes it so beautiful, right? Court storm, people like, well, why it's dangerous, it's stupid, why is it all those things, right? I'm not going to sit here and explain to you what your emotional attachment to this sport is, whether you're a fan or a media member or somebody's trying to do this as a professional, somebody who's, a diehard, 50-year season ticket holder at a prestigious university. I don't care. I don't care what your affiliation is to the school or to the program or to college basketball, but I'm trying to tell you that it's authentic. It's something that gives students a real opportunity to enjoy something that they may never experience again in their life. They will not experience it ever again in their life, right? If they're a 4-year school or a 4-year student in a school, maybe they're a senior, right? Maybe they transferred to a school. Maybe they were in community college and only get 1 or 2 years out of a 4-year school and get to experience it, right? I defend the little guy in this argument, probably more than you might think, even though I do advocate for mid-major and low-major college basketball because it's some of the best basketball in the country, even down into the Division II and Division III level, right? All basketball is good basketball. But, in closing here, right, I've been part of 3 court storms this year. 3. I don't know of many people that have seen 3 in their life or in a month or in a week. Obviously, they've gotten more strenuous, or I think Josh laid out the case where it was like they've gotten more what's the word he used? I don't know. They just aren't as special anymore, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with hearing that out because, should Creighton do it against the number 1 team in the country? I'm going to say they should, but I get it. Creighton, like being the 13th ranked team in the AP poll at the time, 15th or whatever it was, right? A top 15 team being a number 1 team, a team that they've beaten many times in that spot. You can argue that all you want, right? But the ones I'm not going to argue with people about because I think it's good and I think it's fun is App State Auburn. Right, I don't have the exact stat in front of me, but App State has never reached that kind of height in a regular season win before. What Kearns has done for that program, for that environment, it was worth every dollar I paid to be there. I wasn't even a media member that day. I was in the area, and I was like, we are going to this game no matter what, and worth that, right? The atmosphere, just the way that the audience and the fans and students poured into that environment, and just the court storm was just a representation of the earning that win, right? I think it was their first Power 5 or Power 6 win at home ever or something like that, right? There's a historical relevancy to it that I think is valuable. The second one, Charleston and UNCW, right? That one might be indefensible for those that think maybe it happens too much, right? Look, it's for Wilmington. If you're getting Charleston here, I'm not trying to break down the CAA on this open, but if you're Wilmington, Charleston beat you 3 times last year. I mean, that's a huge passion point for a student, right? For those shirtless swimming and diving team members that are 3 feet from the Charleston bench that are building that environment, and the student section that got there 2.5 hours before the game, before I even pulled into the parking lot and walked in to start my notes. Like that environment, the way Trask was prepared for that rivalry, it's dated back now a few good decades that these two teams go at each other. They've been good, right? The history with the coaching history, Kelsey obviously coming in there and building a winning program, what Coach Siddle's done, what the coaches have done before Coach Siddle there at UNCW. Like, it has been a thing that has kind of been brewing, and both teams have leaned into it. So I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? You beat somebody you haven't beaten. You can show the inferiority, I think, is what people are going to bring up. Josh and Peyton have both brought that up in the argument on Everything College Basketball. But look, UNCW, I'm defending it. Like, it was a sellout, one of the best crowds. Actually, I will say it's probably the best crowd I've been a part of this year, without a doubt. I mean, I know it's a little tighter, a little louder than App State's arena is, a little bit bigger there out in Boone, but UNCW, that was just an incredible experience, and those guys earned it. The third point I didn't get to bring up on ECB because it hadn't happened yet, but I said, hey, I laid out the case. I said, if Campbell beats UNCW on Monday, we recorded that on Sunday, then I'm not going to cry about it if Campbell is going to rush to court, because they don't really have ever a win at their home arena in their school history that they can account for and say that was probably a reason to do that. Here we are. I'm recording this the night after it happened, and if you want to read my full recap, this is a really fun plug. I'm really glad I get to do this. I wrote about the double overtime win that Campbell had. Trezarian White and Anthony Del Orso going at each other back and forth, 30 points for each of those guys. It's 30-plus for each of those guys. Jason Zanani had his career high. He had 2 of the biggest defensive plays of the game. Both happened in double overtime. He had 13 points in double overtime. Give a huge shout-out to Jason for that. That was my last home game covering the Camels. Really cool announcement coming on that. I'll give it to you at the end of the open here, actually, if you stuck around. Terrence Oglesby was there for CBS Sports Network. Shout out to T.O. for that. Super, super awesome dude. Got a chance to chat it up with him for a few minutes before the game. But just incredible. All around, just unbelievable game to be a part of. Double overtime, and the students rushed to court. It is what it is. It happened. I'm happy about it. I'm okay with it. And again, it's a win for the little guy. So all in all, court storming, I'm pro. I obviously think there is a solution. I think we figure it out. There's something we can do with the shot clock. This is not where I'm here to lay that out. Everything College Basketball, we did that again. I'll reiterate that for the 400th time. Podcast will be linked below if you want to go check that out. My announcement is that was my last game at Gore Arena this year covering the Camels. We're covering a team in the CAA coming to play the Camels. However, not my last time seeing the Camels. I will be in Washington, D.C. from March 9th through the 11th. 8th through the 11th, but I'll be at the games on the 9th and the 10th on those Saturdays and Sundays. Games covering all 4 games both days. House of College Hoops is what I'll be there for, just like I've been all year, just like for House Enterprise that you see on the podcast on YouTube on the screen there. Super excited. Zach Penrice will be there as well. He'll be covering the semifinals and championship game for House of College Hoops. So excited to partner up with him on that as a local of the DC area. I know he's really excited to cover it as well. So I just couldn't turn down an opportunity to head up to the nation's capital, spend some time with my family. Big thank you to them for having me there. Be riding the train up, so plenty of time to get prepped. I've seen a lot of these teams play this year. I'm super excited to see Monmouth and Xander Rice. Look, there's a plethora of teams I could say I'm excited to see. Towson haven't seen since Charleston. I know that at the time that they had some moments in Charleston that they weren't probably proud of, but hey, they're one of the best teams in the league. Drexel, believe it or not, haven't had a chance to see this year yet, but all in all, super excited to check the CAA out on the way to its budding end here for a championship to see who gets the one bid to the NCAA tournament. So Couldn't figure out how to word that last sentence perfectly, but court storming, I'm pro. We got a solution. We'll figure it out. Shot clock, no handshake line. There's things that we can do about it. Hopefully they're not nipped in the bud forever. But if they are, just know that I won't be thrilled about it. All right, that's enough of an open. Again, 2-pointers, $20 off your first purchase, SeatGeek.com, link in the top of the description. Go use that code to get you some March Madness tournaments, NBA games, concerts, whatever you guys are up to. All right, with that being said, enjoy the episode with Tyler Metcalf. All right, as you heard in the intro and at the top, writer and podcaster for @NoCeilings NBA and contributor for Canis, Hoopus, got it right after I've heard it a couple of times, @TMetcalf11 on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it. You know him as Tyler Metcalf. First time on the show, so first of all, how are you? And then let people know a little bit about yourself, when they can find you.
Yeah, thrilled to be on. Thanks for having me. I pretty much covered it. Canis Hoopus for Timberwolves coverage, No Ceilings for college, NBA rookie, NBA draft coverage. Those are kind of the main ones. No Ceilings NBA across all socials.
What's it like doing a pod with Rucker every day? Because I've had him on here 3 to 4 times every day, I guess a couple times a week, whatever it is. I'm sure you guys talk more than just the one pod, obviously. But, I've had a lovely relationship with him when just 3 shows on here, and just I can only imagine what a weekly show is like with him. So for the listeners who might not be new, or they might be new to your content or something like that as they go check out No Ceilings, 30-second, like what it's like working with Rucker on a week-to-week basis, the conductor of chaos.
The absolute worst. I know he comes across as, jovial and fun-loving, but absolute diva, super high maintenance behind the scenes. No, the whole crew over at No Ceilings rocks. We all see things a little differently, which is really fun for obviously, the content we produce, because I may be all in on a prospect and someone, even Rucker a lot of the times is completely out on them. And we have these different viewpoints and ways that we kind of just value different traits or see different things in basketball. So it creates really fun discussions, and we get into it sometimes, but it's always respectful, and it's just we're passionate about the stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, like, this class is only gonna exacerbate that even more. So
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think people should dive into the stuff there. That's why I highlighted at the top, and we'll also plug it on the way out later as well. Why I have you here as the title and the thumbnail and all of the last 2 minutes will kind of indicate is No Ceilings isn't everything that you do, which I think is really awesome and unique. Canis Hoopus is, for those who don't know, SB Nation for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Lynx. I told you off air, but I'll just say this because I'm not hiding anything with this. I thought about this segment in early to mid-November. And then even as a doubter at the time, I was like, let's figure the timing out. Let's figure out what this is going to look like. I almost want to just like wrestle with my own personal doubt. But again, your first time here, so I want to get your perspective on this as somebody that, I think there's a lot of people that cover a lot of different teams and different facets that I trust, but I'm going to take your word on the Minnesota Timberwolves coverage. So here we are. What is so different about this team that makes them legit contenders in your opinion?
Boy, and they have an identity, and that's something this team really hasn't had since the Kevin Garnett era. And it's not just that they're the NBA's best defense. It's the fact that they're the NBA's best defense for basically the entire year, and by a wide margin. It's the widest margin between first and second in quite some time. It's like the last 4 or 5 years, if I remember off the top of my head, or at least going into All-Star break. That's about what the time frame was. And the gap between them and second is about similar to second and eighth or ninth. So they're not just the best; they're the best by a long shot, and they've never been a good defense, really. When we go back and look at their teams for the past 20 years, they have always been a pretty putrid defense. They've never had a top 5 defense by defensive rating in their history. So this will be the first time that they not only are the best defense in the league, assuming things hold through the final, 25-ish games here, but the first time that they're ever the top 5. And that's really saying something. And having that ability to defend at an extraordinarily high level night in and night out, that's something that you can carry with you when you go on the road and when you're in a long homestand or a long road trip or whatever. It's this consistency on both ends of the floor. I know there's a lot of concerns and red flags about their offense and especially their late game stuff. But every single game, we see their defense show up at a really, really, really high level in a ways that we've never seen from this franchise before. So it's really refreshing that going into every game, we know at least something that we're going to get out of them that's going to be basically at an elite level. Obviously, outlier nights excluded.
Yeah, I think the last sentence there, or the last two, I think are telling of just the flexibility of what they can bring to the table on a night-to-night basis, which we know. I love the NBA as much as anybody in the world, but the regular season compared to the playoffs, there's no it's like the hockey in the same regard, right? Like I enjoy the playoffs more because it's real, authentic professionals at their highest level, and the flexibility of that. I love that you mentioned the defense part of it because I was not aware of the historical nature of some of that, where the rating will fall. I think the way I thought about this team coming into the year was somebody had to adapt. And I know that question came up a lot. It's maybe an obvious answer, but I'm just curious your thought on it. And I apologize, we're already on the first question, and I'm completely going off the agenda I sent
No,
you.
I love it.
But who do you feel like whose adaptation was the most impactful to this team's success, at least through the first couple of months?
It's Cat. Easy. He's the one who's had to sacrifice the most on both ends of the floor. He's the one who's had to kind of morph his game the most. He's the one who's had to take the biggest step back. Since he got drafted, this has been his team. And, rightly or wrongly, they've had their ups and downs, but this has always been Cat's franchise. And this year is the first time, very clearly, this is Anthony Edwards' team. He is the end all be all with this team. If he gets hurt, they're done. Season's over. But Cat's not only kind of had to take a step back in terms of kind of standing in the locker room or, oh, is this my team? Is it your, all those kind of first take headline topics in that sense, but just on the court, adjusting from being a center defensively into now guarding guys as a four and having to chase them off screens and rotate. And then when Rudy goes off, then, all right, now you have to switch back into being a five. It's tough. It's a lot of different defensive schemes and stuff that he has to get through his head and execute on a nightly basis. He's far from a perfect defender, but he's playing some of the best defense of his entire career right now. On top of that, he's on the fringe of being a 50, 40, 90 guy, was an all-star, still put in up big numbers while being that second or third option on offense. So there's still a lot of ways that he can kind of grow. But the fact that he's kind of converted from being this offensive supernova into more of a play finisher and being good enough on defense, it's a lot to ask from a guy who's making, $60 million a year in near the prime of his career. We really don't see guys adapt and be willing to check their ego like that and take that step back, but it's a testament to him and his character and also the guys on this team and Anthony Edwards' ability and this coaching staff for getting him to buy in and do those things and stop being the focal point of everything and take more of a backseat role.
Honestly, I was going to come up with a question somewhere in there as a response, and I don't have one because I think the 50, 40, 90 thing, all of it is perfectly true and correct. I mean, you look at where some of his averages are going to come down to. He just from a production standpoint, it's just been more fluid, and it seems like the fit just obviously like the year. I wish I had all the data to back this up. I really don't have it in front of me right now, but the amount of times we see a team or a guy on an injury is another case too, like with Jamal Murray, where it's the second year of an adaptation. That always, like last year obviously was an adjustment from just the first year of the trade. I'm still not going to defend the trade from NBA history. I'm just not like you've probably heard that before. Maybe you've seen people talk about it, but it's one of the most indefensible trades from a value standpoint, but that is aging poorly, at least from now until we'll see how this ends. But look, I think everything about Cat that I thought and believed is now changing in front of me, which again, I think all of that, last few minutes summed it up. So, plus I want to make sure this next part, I know we're going to spend time on, and you said it, like this is Anthony Edwards' team. This is a guy that I wanted to kind of morph everything that you cover into just a little bit, summarizing how we've gotten here almost so quickly, I think would be where I would go with it. First of all, I guess I have these in 3 different parts here. Where did you have Anthony Edwards on your board that year?
He ended up at number 2 for me. That was the COVID year. Ended up overthinking everything that year. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he ended up at 2 for me.
and regardless of who's won, it's irrelevant to this point. I'm assuming it's probably LaMelo, but
Nope.
okay. Well, it's James Wiseman for those watching on YouTube who just saw a head shrug or a head nod. Sorry, but was it Wiseman?
No, it was Denny.
Oh yeah, okay.
I was all aboard the Denny train, and a big reason was because I thought he was going to be an awesome defender, and well, I at least got that part right.
Fair.
But the offensive game hasn't quite grown. So, like I said, I overthought a lot of stuff that year.
That draft would be such a fun redraft now, just because of
It'd be a mess.
I mean, at the end of the day, like teams, I'm giving no one problems for that draft, probably for the rest of time, because again, we've never experienced anything like it. The lack of interview, at least in person, right? Obviously, we aren't teams doing that, but there's still a thing we take from that, whether it's information, whether it's maybe a clip that comes out, whatever. Like we still learn from those experiences where guys go in, no in-person workouts. Like there's a just entire list of reasons that made it bad. Desmond Bane obviously is a perfect example of a guy that there's no way if we do that draft again with all the information that we should have had in a full year, he probably doesn't go that late. It is what it is. I still stand by that. So regardless of the placement, there was obviously a reason, regardless of what Denny, like I'm trying to separate the who was one and why from the two who was one and why, or two and why. What were his weaknesses, and if the answer is, hey, here's a list of them, how has he overcome some of them to get to a point this quickly for you personally?
Yeah, and the big thing was just the consistency. We obviously saw the physical tools, and the number one bullet on his highlight film was that second half against Michigan State. I think it was the Maui tournament where he dropped like 40 points in the second half in overtime. And that was like, oh my God, okay, this is the guy who's number one. And then for the rest of the season, it was just a whole bunch of up and down. The effort was in and out. The defense wasn't really there. There wasn't really much playmaking. The shot selection was rough. And all of that kind of stuff is what garnered the comps to Waiters and Wiggins and these guys who the physical tools were incredible. And, once every couple of weeks, they would have these monster performances. But a lot of the time, you just kind of forgot that they were out on the court. Ever since he stepped into the NBA, you've never for a second forgotten that Anthony Edwards was on the court. Year over year, his playmaking has improved. His shooting has improved. His shot selection has improved. His shot creation around the rim, his ability to kind of mix in power with deceleration and finesse, everything's improved. And the big thing with him that I didn't account for, and this is kind of what you alluded to with the lead-in, was just the leadership and some of the intangibles with him, where it is all very, very real. And coming into the draft, the only quote unquote intangible pieces that we had on him was that interview that was incredibly skewed and, emphasized about how much he just hated basketball and didn't want to work at it and preferred football and all of that kind of stuff. And it just painted this really awful picture of who he actually is. And after being in the locker room around those guys and seeing him interact with his teammates and warm up and, go through practices and all that kind of stuff, it's like, no, I think he kind of likes basketball. Like, this is a dude that gets it. And every interview, he almost never talks about himself. It's always hyping up everyone else around him. And if he is talking about himself, he's taking accountability for something that went wrong, where he should have been more aggressive scoring, or, missed a kick out, or should have played better defense. So it's all that kind of stuff that I didn't get a sense of at all during the pre-draft process. But it's just steps that you want to see from your franchise superstar in their career development. And at 22, he's made those steps not only year over year, but basically by the month throughout his career.
Yeah, look, you honestly went into the leadership trait part of it that I had kind of alluded to about not loving basketball. I wrote it in the agenda, so it wasn't like I was hiding the follow-up there. But, that was such a ridiculous question from a standpoint of it's somebody. Look, we have to. I mean, if it comes up, we have to at least think about it. It has to be something that it enters the thought of the room, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I thought it was ridiculous, right? Anytime a guy plays multiple sports, Allen Iverson's a great example, right? Incredible football player who to this day, Hall of Famer, by the way, who to this day is yeah, I really still love football more. He's still in on that, completely. It is what it is, right? We'll never be able to relive what could have been Allen Iverson on a football field. He's one of the best players in Virginia history. The point I'm making is it's something that we kind of have to learn how to sift through. And again, that draft, the whole thing, it's its own conversation. But we've heard enough stories now. I don't really know where I'm going with this, to be honest with you. I know I'm landing the plane on it somehow. But we heard enough stories from John. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Really great coverage for the Athletic. People know who I'm talking about. Insert photo here of John. But there's an incredible story of like, I think it was either his rookie year or his sophomore year, where the history with Cat and Jimmy Butler and just all this kind of stuff. And Ant knew that relationship wasn't really well. And I'm telling the story as poorly as I can. But just there's so many stories like it where you hear this is the guy that is taking over this locker room, and guys respect him regardless if there's NBA champions in that locker room, whether there's guys that have been in the league for 10 years like Cat and Rudy and all these other guys. It's just impressive from somebody. I guess I'm landing the point on a comment more that you can, kind of keep going, but it's just impressive for somebody so young, even with the question marks that we had.
Yeah, and I'm just coming into the year, I agree that these comps are absurd just because MJ is who he is. But I mean, when you're 21, 22 years old and you're seeing people like Stephen A or, top people on ESPN and TNT start throwing out the comparison to Michael Jordan. I mean, it'd be really, really easy to get over your skis and completely full of yourself in that kind of sense, because it'll be like, yeah, you know what? Screw you guys. I am MJ. Like, let's go out and I'm going to start playing like him and being like him and all that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, Ant is incredibly confident in himself. But it's not this arrogance that affects stuff in the locker room or leads to a lack of work ethic or anything like that. Every interview he does, it's always hyping up Cat for all-star or all NBA, or hyping up Rudy for defensive player of the year, or Jane McDaniels as most improved or all NBA defense, and Nas and Nikhil Alexander as 6 men of the year. It's always about building up the team around him. And he rarely ever actually talks about himself unless there's a very direct pointed question about himself. Everything is always about the team and hyping up the guys around him.
So tying together the two things, kind of putting a bow on it a little bit, but because I think we've got some good stuff at least to get to, but we know what he is from an offensive standpoint. Like coming into his career, I have always said this. We've never done a draft pod together, so I will say this for the context of what this question is going to sound like. Is when I tell people I do NBA comps to guys, it has nothing to do with what I think they will become. I think that's very clear. I know you guys have done a very great job of talking about comps and the debate behind it and all this other stuff. I do it for me and me only. I do it of how I'm going to think about the player in the NBA, so I can find a role, so I can find something that if they fail, I can still fall back and say this is what they could have been or what their ideal fit would have been. Okay, so making that clear. I comped him to D-Wade. I knew that the three-point shot was I had some questions about it coming into the year. Thinking that he's a 38% shooter this year is awesome. Like that completely changes the style of offense, and we know what he can be offensively. So I'm kind of keeping that out there for a second, right? 26.5, 5.5, 5.5 is nuts for a guy that I had a lot of questions about in a lot of those categories. The question I'm trying to get to is the defense that much better from him? I know you mentioned the team stuff. That's how we led the pod. But is his defense more of it's improving continuously, or is it something that feels like it's an effort thing that he can flip the switch? I feel like I see both sometimes, and I'm curious for somebody who watches it every night.
It's definitely improved, but the bulk of it is, oh, okay, now it's time to lock in. Let's defend. So his on-ball defense throughout the game and throughout the year has really improved and taken important steps forward. But when you look at him, and obviously those physical tools, he's an athletic freak. I think coming into the draft, P3 had him tested in like the 99th or 100th percentile in basically all of their categories. So guys like that, with that size, that speed, that strength, all of it, they should be able to be awesome on-ball defenders. And he's kind of grown into that. The off-ball stuff has been awful. It's been really bad, where if you cue in on him, especially early in a game, you'll see him get back cut a couple times. You'll see him ball watching as the shot goes up and give up an offensive rebound. But when it gets late into games and, that final 2 to 5 minutes and the game's close, he immediately turns into one of the best defenders on the floor. He's not afraid of taking on the toughest perimeter option. We've seen him and Jaden McDaniels kind of be just suffocating defensive a suffocating defensive duo on the perimeter. Games like Boston earlier in the year or Dallas a couple times this year and late last year, where they're just not giving up an inch of space, and then they're switching between each other, moving their feet, defending with strength and length, and not fouling. So when he really wants to be, he can be an all NBA level defender. It's just more so, when is that switch going to flip? It'd be awesome if he did it for all 4 quarters, but given the offensive load that he has to carry, and again, being 22, it's pretty unlikely that that's going to happen at least anytime soon.
That's what makes the playoffs so fun, though. Like, you
Yeah.
might not need that intensity in the second quarter, right? Like, those games are going to feel like that, but you are going to have enough guys. I think you mentioned Nikhil Alexander-Walker, plenty that I think people need to realize how important he's been. Like, that is somebody that if Jaden McDaniels is not playing well, even from and look, even some of the best defenders have off nights as a defender, right? You have enough guys that you can say, okay, stop the gap here a little bit. Just get us to where we need to contribute here at the end of the game. Look, the stats that we have access to from an advanced standpoint back up that he's a good defender. Like, it's not like we're sitting here going, okay, is it a switch? I do feel like there's just some nights where, like, it might be a Tuesday against, I don't know, who's like 13th in the West, like whatever. Just a team that's like, that's just far enough out of the play-in that they're like not really trying. Like, I can't think right now. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but just a team that's not New Orleans, that's not Utah, that's not a team that's trying to get in the play-in or compete. He doesn't rank below in the 3 highest categories on Synergy. He does not rank below 62% points per possession rank. So good, very good, very good, good, very good, excellent, very good, and good. And obviously all the ones at the bottom that I just listed that were the last few, 14 possessions, 16 possessions, 26 possessions. So all of the ones that he is a primary defender on, pick and roll ball handler is the worst out of those. So just want to make that clear to people. But I think sometimes that's more of a coverage thing where he gets, they have to decide whether they're going under the screen, over the screen. I think there's some things there that will contribute to that number because ultimately if they score on the possession, he still gets docked for that a little bit. I'm giving him credit for that in the regard of we watch it enough. We know he's a good defender. Anything else on Ant that just maybe you haven't wrote about, haven't done on a pod because you do a lot of stuff with the draft? Anything you're itching to talk about with Ant before we get into the last piece that I think is actually just as impactful to the team's performance that we have talked about before already?
I mean, he's just so much fun, and it continues to shock me that he's 22 years old because he carries himself like he's a 10-year vet. The reverence that he has in that locker room, that he has from opponents. He's not intimidated by anyone. The self-confidence is through the roof. And I just really highly recommend just watching him kind of navigate the paint in traffic. His handle still needs some work, but the way that he mixes in like the powerful big time highlight dunks with these incredible deceleration euros where he's snaking his way through 4 defenders and then finishing with an inside scoop on the other side of the rim. It's like, oh my God. So I know the stuff where he dunks on someone is the stuff that makes the top 10, but the deceleration and the footwork and the balance and the strength aspects, his finesse finishes, I think are almost just as impressive, if not more, and just a real testament to how much of a freak athlete and just skilled player he is and continuing to grow into.
Here's my full circle moment so we can segue. Dwayne Wade's handle was very, very interesting very early in his career. It was very far out in front of him, if I remember correctly. I was just starting to watch basketball around that time. But the point is it wasn't tight, and it obviously got to a point where you could rely on him as a ball handler in the playoffs, not as a point guard. Wow, shocker. Feels like we're having a parallel moment here. That was kind of my point. Anyway, all right, what I was trying to say in English earlier, but it just didn't come out right at all, was this last point I want to talk about that to me is arguably just as impactful and important as the defense, as Anthony Edwards, as all of these pieces. I don't think Naz Reid gets talked about really at all as he should, as a guy that's in the top. I think I had him second for when I did midseason awards. I'll link that somewhere on the screen. I don't know. But Naz Reid, how impactful has he been to this team's success as a 6-man that honestly shocked me he hadn't started a game, at least since I had looked at the stats last.
Yeah, and he's been huge. The biggest thing with him is how much his defense has grown. And sorry to kind of keep hyping on the defense all episode, but it's what this team does. When him and Rudy are on the court together, they have a defensive rating of 98.2. That is obscene in a year where I think the top 5 offenses in the league right now are the top 5 offenses in NBA history. That's absurd. So not only is this kind of Twin Towers approach worked with Rudy and Cat, but it's also working when Nas comes on the court too. Then on offense, the shooting, the handle, the ability to pressure the rim, he's just grown across the board. And I think the biggest thing with him that doesn't really show up in the stat sheet, that doesn't, really get a ton of attention is just how decisive he is with this decision making. Where when the ball gets to him, he's either shooting, driving, or passing. It doesn't stick with him. It's immediate. He knows exactly what the defense is doing, what he's going to do before the ball gets to him. And that just frees up so much and puts so much more pressure on the defense because they don't have that extra second to react to whatever he's doing. The windows of opportunity in the NBA are minimal. Like you can't hesitate. If you hesitate, plays broken up, you're screwed. Whatever advantage was there, it's gone. And Nas doesn't always do that. The decision may not always be the right one, but it's quick, it's decisive, it's rarely results in a turnover. So his ability to effectively shoot from outside provides an awesome and kind of a rare shooting threat off their bench, which they don't really have a ton of. But then he can also really utilize mismatches where he can draw the opposing center out to the perimeter, use his handle and his speed to blow past them, use his size and strength to finish now with either hand in the post over smaller defenders. So he's been a little streaky this year, but his overall impact has been absolutely immense. And there's a reason why he's one of the fan favorites in Minnesota.
Reliable. That's the word I kept coming to for the midseason awards. I don't think you said it at all in that last couple moments there, but just the word that kept sticking out to me every time I watched and every time I tried to concisely come up with an award. I can't remember if I gave it to him or Monk or something. Whatever, it doesn't matter. They were both top. They were top 2. Him and I think I gave it to Monk just because Monk is basically a 5.5 assists per game guy, and it doesn't even make any sense what he's doing off the bench for them. And I don't think he started a game either. So the fact that you're getting a 40% 3-point shooter on almost 5 attempts a game, I'm rounding up slightly, 4.6 attempts, but still, that is something that I know that the coaching staff has to feel like in 22 minutes a game, even if that percentage comes down, it's somebody that you're okay with taking that shot. Maybe not in the final 5 minutes in clutch, but because he probably won't be in that lineup, I would think at least. But the ideal scenario is he's somebody that's going to get you to those final 5 minutes, and then you have closers that you can rely on offensively from those same positions like Cat and Anthony Edwards. My last thing, what is their ideal closing lineup that gets them to the NBA Finals?
Oh boy, ideal.
Or I guess lineup that you trust the most. I know you're not Saunders, but Finch or whoever the heck. I get the Saunders family has been in that freaking city forever, and I do that more than I'm willing to admit. Anyway, sorry, Finch. I did that literally 2 weeks ago.
No, anyway. I think it's just got to be their starting lineup. Honestly, they're plus 11.5 on the season. Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. It's kind of a lame answer, but
it's perfect.
I mean, even when you look at kind of moving some guys out, say Jaden's in trouble and you swap him with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they still have a net rating of plus 9.3 on the year. The versatility, the size, the defense that they've been able to generate night in and night out has been absolutely extraordinary. So I know there are always going to be questions about how real are they and can we trust them? And we always have those questions about a team until they actually do it. And we were having these same questions about Denver last year. Maybe not quite as extreme because Jokic is a god. But regardless, I think their starting lineup is just the best one. Mike Conley is 37 and still just a spring chicken, just never makes a mistake. Rudy Gobert is arguably playing the best defense of his career. I don't care about him potentially getting pulled out to the perimeter against teams going small. He's moved his feet and defended on the perimeter so stinking well this year that it doesn't matter. Some of his closeouts and ability to defend out in space have been absolutely sublime. So is there going to be a game in the playoffs where a team goes small and they get scorching hot and shoot 60% from 3? Probably, maybe. Is it going to be an indictment on this team as a whole? No, absolutely not. So I just think that that lineup of their starters offers the most offensive potency, the most defensive reliability. And God, they're so freaking big and athletic and really, really, really difficult to deal with.
All right, I lied. Last question before we get to rapid fire. Because you kind of alluded to it there. A team gets really hot, they go small, they figure out an adjustment. Who is the team that you're the most afraid of? I don't care if it's an obvious answer, it's fine. Who's the team you're most afraid of in the Western Conference Finals, assuming that's where you make it? And then what is the one thing that prevents them from getting over the hump?
And the easy answer is Jokic, just because his ability to manipulate everything. But this is going to sound this very easily could age horribly. But I still think they match up pretty well with Denver across the board. I'm not saying I guarantee a win or anything, but I think they give Denver arguably the biggest competition in the West this year. The Clippers kind of, but Wolves have handled them pretty easily their last couple games. Thunder a little bit, just because of how chaotic their defense is, and so much of that series is going to come down to kind of turnovers and ball security. The one that really kind of gives me the most worries or red flags is oddly the Pelicans. The Timberwolves have really struggled with their kind of ability to match them in size and strength and speed and length and all of that kind of stuff. That they're consistently able to muck it up and make things really difficult. So Denver's the obvious one, especially if we're talking what conference finals. Before that, though, it's probably the Pelicans.
Yeah, you mentioned versatility. You mentioned a team being able to change and get into a lineup that I don't think they'll go 60% here. Let me be upfront.
Yeah.
But the Pelicans they're unique because they have an ability to switch and be able to get into things that they can disrupt teams with. I think disrupt's a really good word for that. All right, I think that's a great bow on the Timberwolves. Rapid fire. I like to do this with every first time guest if I can remember, and I did. Thank goodness. Just a couple of things that helps get to know you a little bit, what you cover, stuff that's going to put you on a clock here. Think of it like a pitch clock, 30 seconds or less on some of these. If there's a story or a thing that goes long, don't care, let it happen. That's good. But the ideal part is to try to get to 30 seconds here. Is there a sliver of hope or thought that you thought the Jimmy Butler experience would work once everything went south? I don't really know how to ask that question. I know it happened. Right. It is something that I've never asked someone about who follows the team.
Are you talking about like going into the interview or like after the trade? Like when they first got him, or like when it got ugly?
Both. I really didn't know how to ask that question.
When they first got him, I was ecstatic. I was like, oh my God, Jimmy Butler, like this is going to be awesome. His defense leadership, all of that kind of stuff. Perfect fit next to Cat and Wiggins. They were good that year until he got hurt. People forget that they were the 2 seed and then dropped to the 8th. But no, going into that season, there were rumblings all summer. I had zero expectation that it was ever going to work.
So I guess the follow-up question I had written down, if it made sense, was scale of 1 to 10, how confident were you that it would work?
At the trade, like a 7. Going into the season, 0.
See, I knew when I wrote this down that there was going to be no way to get the right answer for the right question out. And I was like, you know what? I just want to we all watched that happen and we were like, what in the hell is going on? And that's basically where we are now still to this day. Dream job in basketball.
Oh boy. I don't know. I've yet to find it. Maybe...
I like how open-minded I've yet to find it is. Like
I've yet to find it. We're still working on it.
I like it. Greatest prospect you've ever witnessed in person, and I can't remember. I put an asterisk here. If you're going to say Victor Wembanyama, who is not that? I can't remember if you went and saw him last year or anything like that. So if it is Victor, then take him out for a second.
Oh boy. Let's see. Who have I seen in person this year? He kind of sucked when I saw him, but Zachary Risache at Hoop Summit last year. He did not have a good Hoop Summit game, but God, he's really turned his season around. So he's looking incredible right now. Victor at Summer League was something else, but
those are the best 2 ever for you.
Yeah, I unfortunately haven't been able to do a ton of in-person stuff until recently. So Unfortunately, yeah. But
Tough.
hopefully Cooper Flag will change that in a couple months here.
Love that. Love that. It's a nice little follow up to something coming up. I can't remember exactly how long you've been doing the draft stuff, but just maybe all time, maybe before you were actually really doing the draft, or just in general, however you'd like to answer this. Prospect all time that you never sold stock on or never gave up on, a la Kevin O'Connor with Killian Hayes. Just never, literally never gave up, even after the waiving. I think he's still finding the right team fit. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it
out. Kobe White and Trey Mann. I had both those dudes top 5. Absolutely adored them. Was devastated when the Timberwolves took Jarrett Culver over Kobe White. Just always believed. Loved their games coming out of school, and they're having. Oh, I guess Trey Mann's having a good 2 weeks here, and Kobe White's having a good season. But sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, as Rucker always says.
That look, the Kobe White one aged like a perfect bottle of wine, so I think that's great. I also have a presence. I never told you this, but I live in Central North Carolina, right in the middle of all 4 of those schools, and that Kobe White obviously went to North Carolina, and that's going to age very well on this show for your approval rating. So good on you for that one, whether you realized it or not. Biggest swing and a miss.
Oh boy, unfortunately, looking like Johnny Davis. There's
I forgot about I totally forgot. And I knew y'all did this at some point, so sorry.
And there's some stuff, that wasn't exactly handled ideally over there by the team that took him, but it's a bummer. It's a bummer. Hoping he figures it out, and hopefully they stop screwing with the shooting mechanics and instill some confidence in that young man.
As of right now on Tankathon, the Timberwolves would have the 28th overall pick. Ideal. You've probably gotten this question before, and I'm just I see the tabs moving and the screens moving in the background.
Pulling up the
ideal,
board.
just pick that you are like you'd be doing laps on the No Ceilings live stream that night if that's who they got.
Yeah, and for some reason I see some mock drafts having Johnny Furphy going that late. He's not going to go that late, but whew,
I had a feeling
lose my mind. Based on my board, kind of like late first round. And Tristan Da Silva would be phenomenal. Would love that. Tyler Kolek, I think, would be a lot of fun. Neek Clifford. Handful of names there.
Let's be real, it's Johnny Furphy.
I mean, yeah, if we're living in a dream world, of course it's Johnny. It's always Johnny Furphy, but I would be surprised if he didn't go top 10, if not earlier.
This is my plug for there may or may not be a pod that the two of us are on that isn't on either of our channels. So I'm just going to put it out there. That'll happen. Johnny Furphy will come up. I'll let people find that when it comes out. Don't want to spoil anything. All right, last thing. We're bringing it full circle back to the Timberwolves, and we'll get out of here. Most ridiculous thing that you would do or trade for a title this year?
Oh, this year.
Well, I mean, just sure. 50 years from now, when you're 70.
I mean, you know what?
But yeah,
I'm a tortured sports fan, so I'm not sure there is anything I would trade because, I'm a Cubs fan. I grew up a Pistons fan. I'm a Lions fan, so I'm used to the losing. I'm used to the disappointment. It makes the title all that much better. So I don't think there really is anything because when you have to earn it and you have to go through the muck and do it when no one else thinks you can, it just makes it all that much sweeter. So it's kind of a lame answer, but I honestly don't think there is anything.
Did I hear Pistons fan transition in there? Did I catch that right?
Yeah. No, I've always been a Pistons fan growing up.
So how did we end up here? We just did a 38-minute pod about Timberwolves. I'm lost. Like,
I went to. So okay, let's go through the whole history. I'll be brief about it. But mom and stepdad are from Michigan, so grew up watching Michigan sports a lot. Went to school at Minnesota, so wanted to start covering basketball more. So started watching and covering and being a bigger fan of the Timberwolves during that standpoint. So that's 13 years ago. God, I'm old. But I was also a huge Wiggins fan coming out of high school and then college when he went to Kansas. So that helped the transition a little bit too, but yeah.
All right. Love it. No, I abbreviated or not. That's great. I thought I caught that detail and I'm like, I got to get the pieces right. All right. That was great. That's all I had for rapid fire. I skipped around a little bit there, but I ended up where I wanted to with the Timberwolves championship. And if you think of anything, let me know. That there's got to be like a sacrificial lamb of some
Yeah.
like, it's just some kind. Like, I mean, it anyway. All right. But let people know where they can find you. It's obviously on the screen for those on YouTube at TMetcalf11, of course. But anything you're working on, whatever you got to say here on the way out.
Yeah, all my stuff's at TMetcalf11. All my Timberwolves stuff is over at canishoopus.com. It's SB Nation's Timberwolves site. College basketball, rookie, NBA draft stuff is all at NoCeilingsNBA.com. It's all free 5 days a week. We also do about 4 pods a week, give or take, over there. Mine always goes up on Friday along with my articles. So just keep an eye out for it. I had kind of an in-depth piece on Jared McCain last week about how he's way more than just a shooter and how there's so much more to his offense that's just kind of waiting to be untapped. So yeah, all that's over at NoCeilingsNBA.com.
Love the McCain plug. I'm looking forward to it. Everything that he just mentioned will be linked in the description below, or if I can find it, it'll be down there, whatever. We got it all. First of all, thank you. Second of all, everybody who's listening, go give Tyler a follow, subscribe, all that stuff. No Ceilings is obviously doing some incredible work in the draft space. Thank you again, my friend.
Thanks for having me.